And just to let you know a little bit about what we're creating and have been working on, this is all about encouraging best practices, both personally and professionally. So our focus is to have speakers that will come on and give new challenging features for individuals to come up with new solutions that will help support their growth. And that is really truly have been our focus. So today we have an amazing speaker on today. And before we have Jen introduce Marc, just a few things to be aware of. One is, if you do have questions in regards to this specific topic, please type them in the toolbox and we'll make sure we get to those throughout the webinar. And one last thing, please fill out our feedback form. This will be sent to all of you right after the call or shortly after. And this is basically to help us become better in this space. And we are also working on and preparing for an incredible leadership and performance training program that'll be launching in the next few months. So we have experts in this space just to help build community, sharpen each other, and really prepare for becoming the best in our space. So with that said, I'm gonna hand it over to Jennifer, our moderator, who is working with Genre Hotels. She's a performance and mindset coach and has brought on this great speaker. So Jennifer, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. So our feature speaker today is Marc Liu. He's the co-founder and head of advertising at ELMNTL, a marketing and communications agency serving hospitality and travel sectors. As a digital strategist and marketer with over 11 years of experience, Marc leads ELMNTL's advertising team in creating rich digital experiences and marketing campaigns for major hospitality and lifestyle clients. So some of his clients on his roster are the Mara Collection, Selena Hotels, the Concord Hotel in New York, Tourism Authority of Thailand, and also Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So very eclectic group of clients, and we're so excited to have him on today, and we can get his perspective from all the different trends and everything that he's been seeing, and perhaps learn a little bit today that we can take away and use practically and start to implement, so that each one of us feel like we have a little bit more control in this whole game of life currently. So Marc, excited to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me speak with you guys today. I'm really blown away by how many people are on this this webinar and seeing how engaged everyone is. So I'll start sharing my screen and then we can kind of dive into it. Let me see. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Hear me okay? All right, excellent. So the topic for today, restoring confidence in travel through communication. Well, really it's storytelling, and hopefully the reason for that will become apparent after this. But this is a topic that has been at the forefront of my attention and of my team's attention for the last 6 months for obvious reasons. That's why we're all here today. To say that the global pandemic has hit the hospitality sector hard would be a severe understatement. And certainly I've never seen anything like this before, but even talking to colleagues and peers in the industry who predate me by many decades, they've never seen anything like this. There really isn't a blueprint for how to deal with what's going on. There have been crises prior to this. You know, we can think about the financial crisis and, 9/11 before that, and even the SARS outbreak in Asia gives some insight as to how possibly to deal with this, but nothing really matches what we're dealing with right now in terms of the scale, and I think also in terms of the uncertainty. And I think that's where a lot of the problems lie. So we're all really just kind of figuring it out as we go along, us included. But we as an agency have been dealing with this for our clients for quite a while now, and that's really what I want to share with you today, how we have been communicating about COVID-19 on behalf of our clients through storytelling. We'll be talking about some of the concepts that have guided us through this process, but I also want to make sure that I show you some concrete examples of how we've actually done this in the past for clients, so that you know it's not just theoretical. These are things that we've put into practice. What I would really love is if you can walk away from today's talk with even one thing that's actionable, I will be super happy. So we'll be going through those. And at the end, we'll do a little bit of crystal ball gazing, a little prognosticating, because who doesn't love that, and talk about some of the things that we're seeing now and in the future and how, we're thinking about dealing with those. So before we get into the meat of the presentation, I want to give you a little bit of context as to how we've been approaching this. So as Jen had mentioned, ELMNTL is a full-service marketing and communications agency. We work with a variety of different sectors, but chief among which are travel, hotels, and restaurants. So if you can imagine picking 3 of the worst possible sectors to focus on at this particular time, we nailed it. We're up there. Our clients have been absolutely crushed by this, which has given us firsthand experience with dealing with all of the trickiness that COVID has to offer. But our focus on these industries has given us some slight advantages, if you can even call them that. One of them is we work with a lot of destinations in Asia, specifically Southeast Asia. So we've been dealing with the fallout from COVID-19 since the end of 2019, because a lot of those destinations, their number one source of tourism is China. So obviously, as soon as that stopped or people started feeling like that would stop, we had to start addressing that for our destinations, which means we had a little bit of a head start on this compared to, people in the US, and we were able to take the learnings from that and translate that over to our US properties. So that's been helpful in this process. Another thing that has come out of working with the DMOs is that they tend to take a longer view on things. They're not looking at getting people in immediately exclusively, although that's certainly one of their focuses, but they're looking at a 12, 24 month, 36 month recovery time horizon, and they're looking at multiple data points. So having that perspective has also informed a lot of the ways that we've been addressing this for our hotel clients. And also, just by working with different types of sectors, from restaurants to hotels to the DMOs, we can see we have more opportunities to see how the challenges are presenting themselves, and the more data we're able to crunch, the more we're able to translate that to actionable insights for our clients. So we're not completely behind the ball here, but it is challenging for everyone. So let's tackle the big question, right? How should hotels communicate about COVID-19? I personally think that this is a very difficult question to answer in one go. It's a very broad topic, and there are a lot of different angles to this. So in thinking about where to start, what I like to do is try to break it out into the smaller chunks that are a little bit more accessible, and use that as the point of entry. So for today's talk, we'll start by thinking first about where should I be communicating about COVID-19 if I'm a hotel? And this is a relatively simple question, because the answer is everywhere, right? Basically, every channel that you have available at your disposal, you should be messaging about COVID-19, whether it's the website, your social media, if you're doing PR, if you're doing email marketing, you should be communicating through all these channels. So far, not a particularly difficult question. Maybe a more useful question and slightly more difficult is, what should I be messaging through these channels? And so now I'll walk you through some examples of what we've done for clients in the US. This is the website of the Marmara. Jen had previously mentioned them. So they are a luxury hotel, as the name suggests, on Park Avenue. And this is an example of one of the messaging pieces we put on their website. It's a pop-up. It's very straightforward. It appears right away on the website. We're making it front and center. We're not being shy about it. And you can see here, we've got a few different elements on the page. There's an FAQ. There's a link to the policies. There's a message from the general manager to the guests. And there's also, because they focus on extended stay as one of their specialties, talking about the fully furnished apartments there. So fairly straightforward. And this is another hotel that we work with, also in New York, the Concord. For them, we also took a similar approach with a pop-up and all those messages. And here you can see a little bit more detail on the health and safety policies that they've got in place. Here's another example of another property that we work with, and Vincent from the Getaway Hostel is on the call today, so I'll be very careful about what I say. But for them, again, we took a very similar approach. We're being up and front and center with the messaging. There's a pop-up there. For them, the content was slightly different. We put in a newsletter sign up, and they also introduced a summer promotion to deal with COVID. And you can see here that the visual treatment is different, obviously, because it's a different concept, but the general idea that is there the same. So the website for us is the most important digital asset that a hotel has. Now, that's where you're sending all your traffic. You want to be driving as much direct revenue as possible. So we put a lot of time into this. So let's continue with the example. So social media should come as no surprise. That's one of the places where we're messaging about COVID-19. Here we have one of the posts that we created for the Marmara about social distancing. Here we've got a post for the Concord Hotel talking about cleaning protocols, accompanied with a photo of a very pristine looking bathroom. So social media for us is either tied first or second most important digital marketing platform, just in terms of its reach and flexibility. I don't think I need to sell anyone here on the importance of social media. Perhaps less sexy than the website or social media is things like Google My Business, but no less important. I mean, this is one of your primary marketing tools that you have out here. And even though there isn't as much flexibility, you can see here we've put in information about the modification of hours and service. And also in the case of Marmara in particular, they offered special rooms for COVID-19 responders, right? So this is a very important thing. If you're doing a lot of things operationally to deal with COVID-19, you need to be broadcasting it, and Google My Business definitely should always be on your list. Email marketing, if it's a tool that you are employing, and I don't see any reason why any hotel today would not be using CRM or email marketing. That's also an area where you should be putting out messaging around COVID-19. So here you can see for the Marmara, we had essentially a mirrored image to what we had in the pop-up. And here's an example of an email blast that we created for the Getaway Hostel. A little bit different. This one more focused on a promotion around COVID-19, book now, travel anytime. But generally speaking, whatever you're putting out on the website, you should be putting out in your email marketing here. And with these sorts of things, especially with the email marketing, it's important to be timely and get things out expeditiously versus spending a lot of time laboring over designs and that sort of thing. I'll end this section with advertising. So the previous sections we talked about primarily have to do with people who are already familiar with the brand or who are already guests, but you don't want to be neglecting the messaging through your outreach channel. So here we've got an example of paid search where we're talking about commitment to safety and cleanliness for the Marmara, but this could easily apply to paid social, programmatic, retargeting, out of home, print, whatever it is that you happen to be doing. So these are some examples of things that we've done, and after this webinar, you can also check them out. These, I think, for most of these, they're still live. So answering the questions of where and what we should be messaging on is really simple. I don't think any of those ideas are controversial. I think the more enriching question and the more difficult one to answer is how should hotels be communicating about COVID-19? Because I think that's where a lot of brands and properties have hesitations as to what the format should be. And for us, the keystone to understanding this and really to making our lives easier when we're putting together is storytelling, right? Thinking about it along the lens of storytelling. And so, if we're going to talk about storytelling, then we probably need to define it, which is a difficult thing because nobody has the same standard definitions of storytelling. I've stolen a couple here from other agencies, which shall remain unnamed, but I think they're pretty good, right? So I'll just read these out. One definition is using a narrative to connect your brand to customers with a focus on linking what you stand for to the values you share with your customers. It's not a bad definition. The second definition, it's a little bit more theoretical, but I like it as well because it gets to the heart of what we're trying to do. Storytelling is the process of making a connection with the customer first and selling a product second. So for us, we take a fairly broad definition of storytelling. It's the combination of all of the messaging that we put out that tells a narrative about who we are as a property, right? And this isn't one single narrative, because if we're doing our job right, we have a lot to offer to the market. So there are a lot of different lines where this can run, and it's through text, it's through visual mediums. It's a very complex thing, right? But storytelling is how human beings share complex information. We've done this since the dawn of humanity, and this could be the subject for days and days of conversation, right? So hopefully that'll give you a sense of what we mean by storytelling. So why is it so important for us? And specifically, why is it so important for independent hotels? The first one is that storytelling is the key point of differentiation between you and your competitors and the big brands, right? If we are not differentiating ourselves through the storytelling, we're getting stuck in that endless cycle of competition and pricing and race to the bottom. Storytelling is really where we get to possibly even create new markets for ourselves, right? So, and through that, making that connection with the guests, which, as we all know, is stickiness with the guests, it has a direct translation to return on investment. Incredibly important. I know a lot of this can sound very fluffy, but at the end of the day, we also need to make money with this, and storytelling has a vital role in that. Perhaps something that we don't talk about as much is also the value of storytelling for the internal value. So the storytelling that we do as an agency is generally focused on an external audience, but the storytelling that an organization carries through it allows them to transmit their culture throughout the organization. So if you think about your staff and how you train them to deal with guests and operationally excel, the storytelling should play a large part of that. And then this fourth point is one that I love, because oftentimes when we talk about independent hotels in relation to large brands, we often frame the conversation in terms of a disadvantage, right? Like they're bigger, they have more resources, they don't play fair, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas with storytelling, this is one of those few areas where independent hotels actually have an advantage, because they can be more nimble and they have more freedom in expressing that storytelling, and therefore can make an impact faster and with greater strength. So this is something that we're always keeping in mind when we're thinking about how we're putting together the communication. But by and large, the storytelling for us as an agency and for the brands is it helps guide the communication. It helps us figure out quickly how we should be putting information out. It helps us not get stuck. It helps us stay consistent and further the branding. So hopefully by now I've sold you all on the value of storytelling. So if we go back to the examples that we showed earlier, you could look at this as a pop-up. We know the where, we know the what, but the how, right? The how is informed by the storytelling. So the general message, the general manager's message to our guests, this is not just telling, but it's showing that personal touch, is that commitment to connection and engagement, which are core values to the Marmara, right? And you've got the photo of the lovely Noor Erchan on there as well, smiling, so that always helps. To the left, you'll see the scrubs and the hands together, demonstrating the commitment to the COVID-19 responders. We know that they have those packages already. So without even saying those things out loud, showing the commitment to compassion, to community, these are all things that are intrinsically part of the brand's story, right? Sometimes the storytelling is very blunt. Sometimes it's not very subtle. So in the ads, when we're talking about safety as our priority, this is a very serious subject and it's relatively sterile. So sometimes the best way to state it is very plainly. But there are plenty of opportunities for us to have more subtle ways of expressing this. So, we see here this photo of this handsome young gentleman on his balcony with his lavish breakfast, with that view overlooking Midtown Manhattan. I don't know if you guys can see the caption, but I'll read it out. So, new rules, same hospitality. Rest assured your stay will be safe, comforting, and full of relaxation. Enjoy breakfast on the balcony with views of Midtown Manhattan. So this is a great example of storytelling being able to transmit complex information in one breath. So we are directly addressing the needs of COVID-19. We know that there are new rules. We know that people need to be safe, but we have not let go of all of the brand elements that make the Marmara the Marmara, our commitment to luxury, our central location in New York. And one of their brand values is being committed to being New York. They do this in a lot of different ways, but this is not like a fluke, and it's not, these instances aren't rare. We create these opportunities, these moments to tell the storytelling over and over again. And one thing I do want to point out is that this is not a photo that was taken by the property. This is actually user-generated content. So if you do the storytelling well, your guests will do it for you, right? So then it has, network effects beyond just what you can control directly. So when we're thinking about communicating about COVID-19 and connecting that with story, we found the best benefit has been to lean into the elements of your storytelling that do respond to the new needs of travelers. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not, you're not going to create a new brand positioning just because the world has, is on fire. But everyone has elements of their storytelling that they can fold into this and therefore still be able to advance their brand narrative and address what's happening in the world around them, right? And I think this is particularly important now because it's not just the hotels, it's also guests and travelers. There is this apprehension of, when am I going to be traveling again? Am I even allowed to talk about it? Is it okay? How should we discuss that? So you as brands, as properties, can use your storytelling to make it okay for people to talk about travel again. And maybe we don't know when that's going to happen, but we know that it's something that we all love, and we can engage in a conversation about that. This last point I highlighted because I don't want to skim over the fact that you do need to be mindful of your audience and acknowledge the circumstances. Storytelling does not happen in a vacuum, right? So looking at our New York properties, for example, when New York was in the peak of the COVID crisis, there was a period of time where we looked at what needed to be communicated and what was going on in the world, and we said, you know what, we're just going to go quiet for a couple of weeks, right? People need time to process. People need time to breathe, and likewise with everything that's ensued, with the protests, with all the things that are important in the world. These need to be taken into account. So it's not us pushing our narrative, blunt force through. It's being mindful of that. Storytelling is also a relationship. You don't just say the story at someone, you tell them that, right? And that's always something that we need to be mindful of. But that being said, storytelling for us is always important, and particularly in the post-COVID recovery period, there are a couple of considerations that for us make it even more important. One is, there is going to be a period of increased competition with all the hotels opening up at the same time. It may not happen in all geographies at the same time. Everyone's going to go through their different phases, in different ways. But there will be times when you are going back on the market and everyone else is going back on the market. So how will you stand out from the pack, right? And do you start your storytelling then? Or will you lay the foundation for that now so that people are already bought into the story when it's time to go back to hotels? And tied to that is, with the reopenings, we're going to see price slashing. We're going to see a ton of promotions hit the market. And so hotels will need alternative ways to differentiate themselves other than price. Price is an important signal, but we also don't want to be necessarily racing to the bottom. So I always like to include this type of slide because, sometimes you just want a very short version of what we said. So communicate on all channels. There are a handful of things that you must communicate about, but use storytelling, right? Sometimes you don't have a whole lot of flexibility, but you can find them. And if you find them and you take advantage of them, you'll get a lot bigger benefit than just broadcasting an unfiltered message. So that's kind of the end of that section. Now we get to the slightly more fun portion, the crystal ball gazing, and want to talk about some upcoming opportunities that we're seeing now, and some of them that may be coming around the corner. I want to be careful when I'm talking about opportunities. I don't mean that there's going to be a gold rush and that the industry is going to come back, bigger and stronger in the next 6 months. I have no illusions about this. This is going to be a tough time for everyone. It's going to take a very long time for recovery. but there are opportunities for certain, segments, geographies, whatever. So, as business owners and as brand managers, we need to be looking to those and seeing how we can take advantage of those. So here are some of them that we've come across, and we're also in discussions with our peers in the industry. We think nature is going to be one of those that is going to be highly prized. Coast, mountains, lakes, anywhere where people can get away from other people, and especially people who have been cooped up in urban areas. They're going to want to seek that release in nature destinations. Kind of on the flip side of that is the ultra luxury. So we're already seeing this in certain areas where properties that fit that segment are being solicited because they're able to provide a service and exclusivity and isolation for those who have the means. Kind of in between that, suburban hotels where people are looking for access to amenities, whether it's food and dining, nightlife, but still within an area where social distancing is possible. Talking to some of our hotel partners, we've seen that their properties in the suburban markets are already doing better than their urban portfolio properties. I think one of the dominating themes that's going to be coming around the corner, and well, always is true, but especially given where the economy is and where people have lost jobs, lost wages, generally the economy isn't doing as well. Value is going to be prized, not necessarily like low cost, but value. I think that's for almost all concepts, people are going to be seeking that value, and how that's translated in the post-COVID world is going to determine how quickly a lot of these brands bounce back. And this last one, which is I'm kind of a big fan of, not because I'm a fan of how we got here, but this is as a foreigner moving to the US, this is something that's always appealed to me. It's been part of the mythos of America, is the Great American Road Trip. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that the drive market is going to be most important over the next 6 to 12 months, possibly even longer. International travel is not coming back anytime soon. And people will also be extending the ranges that they're going to be considering for destinations, which leads me to think that lodgings along these major routes are going to see pockets of opportunities there as well. So hopefully none of these are particularly controversial. And if you are able to take advantage of any of these, then I would highly recommend to think about, when you are thinking about how to capitalize them, how do you incorporate storytelling in that? And then last little bonus slide, because I also wear the advertising hat for the agency. I've been thinking about some of the implications for advertising as well. So along with the drive market, we've seen a tighter geo-targeting focus. So perhaps this means that there's going to be a greater preeminence of out of home as part of the advertising mix. We've yet to see huge kind of trends in that direction, but something that we've been thinking about. If we're thinking about increased storytelling because we're going to need to stand out in a saturated market, are we going to consider more content-rich ad formats to drive that narrative? So video ads, and video ads now that we have so many different options with YouTube, with connected TV, with all of the social media, there's an abundance of options, and perhaps some of it will be available at a lower rate given the major advertisers have pulled out. But also thinking about content sites that allow you to marry high-level content with access to inventory. So I'm thinking of websites like TravelZoo, for example, where you can have editorial content that tells a story and then that drives it to your property. And the last one, are we looking at more engagement with influencers? The industry has kind of a love-hate relationship with influencers. I've heard it all, and not everyone's a big fan. But again, if we're talking about driving narratives, does that become more of an important feature in the mix? And I include it here because for me, it's very much pay for play here. It is a type of advertising, although it kind of sits in that middle area between advertising and PR. But something that we have been considering seriously, on a hotel specific basis. So some of my more speculative thoughts at the end, but hopefully that was useful for everyone. And there's at least one thing there that you can either steal or modify that you can use for yourselves. And I look forward to all your questions.
Thanks, Mark. That was really informative. Chris, did you have a question or a comment there?
Yeah, going back to storytelling, just to expand on that, it's vital. And I agree with you how to put that out there to the world. Beyond a consumer focus, I think from a client basis, what we've been working on, we have a video, we have an integrated video within our Gmail, and we send out a video message to our clients. And it is really about storytelling, focusing in on, if it's a property in Laguna Beach, for example, we talk about, how I feel connected to the area and how I've visited there and how, been there with my family. And it really doesn't, I think what's worked very well, it's not going in with the sell. It's not going in with, let's meet and talk about our services. Let's connect on that relationship level. And I love what you brought up earlier. It's really making the person feel comfortable, and then letting them know who you are and the product afterwards. But my encouragement for all of you on this call is really consider a video, really consider that personal touch where they feel your emotions, they understand who you are as a person, what makes you tick. And once you understand a little more about the person on the other side, then you can really connect about your product or your company. So if any feedback with the video support, we're more than happy to give you some guidance. But that's just one thing I want to encourage for all of you guys.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Mark, do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, I mean, the storytelling aspect is fascinating for us because really it informs everything that we do. And as a full service agency, clients come to us and they have overarching goals, and chief among which is, please make money for us so that we can keep paying you, right? The storytelling is for us the foundation of all of that. It also happens to be one of the elements that is the hardest to measure in terms of ROI, because unlike, let's say, PPC or some other direct response kind of initiative, it's not something that you can measure kind of from A to B. But without it, all of the other measures are much less effective, because at the end of the day, what are you selling, right? I think hoteliers are great instinctive storytellers. I mean, I think for the most part, one of the reasons why I love working with the industry as well as restaurants is that this, at the foundation, whether they express it in those terms or not, that's one of the reasons why they get into it, because they're looking to provide a unique experience to elevate someone's, day, week, month, and the underpinning there is storytelling. So really, it's a feature of pretty much every conversation that we have.
That's great. Thank you. Do you want to stop sharing your screen, Mark?
Sure.
So Carrie's got a good question here for you, Mark. Because hotels want to welcome everyone, what marketing ideas do people have to attract those travelers who feel like they don't need to social distance or wear a mask? Are there ways to make those travelers feel welcomed?
Okay, let me see if I understand this question correctly. So, marketing strategies for appealing to people who are not into the whole mask wearing thing, and maybe want to
travel without those precautions. Carrie, is that what you mean?
Yes, I kept thinking about ways that we could actually come up with new ideas to make them feel welcome, but yet not feel like they are not following protocol.
Got it. I think what that ties into is not making this a burdensome or kind of not chastising people for not doing what other people are doing or not following those specific protocols. I think by and large, you do want to emphasize that measures are being taken, whether that's government mandated or not. But I think in the messaging there, you can focus on making sure people understand that this is still a great experience, right? And that fundamentally is why they're coming there. All of these things are inconvenient and sometimes makes life difficult, but they're coming there because you have a great experience, you have a great story, and having that incorporated into the messaging. But I wouldn't recommend anyone have specific messaging encouraging people that when we're going in an opposite direction. Partially, you know, just my personal beliefs, you know, from a public health perspective, it's not a great idea, but also because, you know, it's then you're alienating the other side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question coming in from Jonathan Ruiz. With a second wave of COVID essentially upon us, are you showing any signs of slowdown within initiatives recently launched?
Slowdowns within initiatives. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the difficulty of this, right? Like we talked about it in the beginning of the presentation. Nobody knows how this is going to play out, and there's so much uncertainty. So we've, in many different ways, have had to respond to things on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. So there have been plenty of initiatives where we've had to like start, stop, and it really varies market to market. So I think that, I mean, the short answer is like, yes, we have seen some where we've made some progress and then we've had to pull back because other things happened. And even if it wasn't a resurgence in cases, there could have been like one incident that happened within a property. But the best that we can do is just keep making contingency plans, keep plowing forward, and react to the new information as it comes in.
That's great. We've got a new question from Denise. How do we message that it's okay to visit urban areas? And how are you marketing New York hotels currently?
Yeah, I mean, New York hotels is very difficult. I don't know how many of you are from New York, but we've also seen the news there. Most of my team is still based in New York, and we have a lot of properties that are in Manhattan. So that's been very challenging. When things got to their worst, that was one of those times where we had to just kind of pull back, right? Because no amount of storytelling is going to deny reality once things get really bad. New York has done a relatively good job at recovering, and I think I don't remember what phase they're in right currently, but they're progressing forward there. So a great example of this is, you know, the Marmara and the Concorde. You can actually check out their Instagram feed. See the kinds of posts that we've put there. It's we've had a combination there of posts that are explicitly addressing the things that we've done to make it safer, whether it's you know, cleanliness policies, social distancing policies, but also things like cancellation policies, because people want to know that they have that flexibility in case things change. But we're not making that the exclusive thing that we're posting about, because we also have our ongoing brand story that we're putting out. There's still so many great things that we want to tell people about it. So interspersed in there, we have other posts that are, you know, creating those moments again. And then wherever possible, we're melding the two, which is the example that I showed you with the gentleman on the balcony with the breakfast.
Yeah, great. Denise, do you have any other additional questions or comments about that? You can unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah. No, I just find it, it's a challenge, and obviously, Mark, you understand it with the two.
Hey, Denise.
How you doing? We have a couple of hotels in New York, and, you know, our hotels were boutique properties. They're properties that always talked, and our stories were always about socializing, you know, so whether it was up on the rooftop or if it was down at communal dining, you know, we had a large table in the restaurant that, we promoted communal dining. So now, you know, we've paused all those communal type things. We've paused all that socializing. We've taken the same point of view that you have, of course, with health and safety and all the things we've put together. But every now and then I get stuck. I'm like, what can I talk about when my whole story, for the last, for 3 years when we've opened has always been about socializing and being together and sharing, sharing a cocktail, sharing a view, sharing breakfast, sharing a meal. It's our whole concept of our restaurant is shared plates. So, so not only do I have a problem with my own story, I'm also now in New York, which is, which is socially distancing.
Yeah, that's been a tricky one, and I think, I mean, we are going to run across like roadblocks where you just can't push any further, right? And in those circumstances, you may need to pull back on some of the messaging. But also, I mean, this is forcing all of us to be just more creative about how we do it. So I've seen properties that we work with in not quite as densely populated areas, but that have, they've emptied out their garage and created that as like kind of a covered patio area where now there is some socialization available, and they've brought out live bands. Not everybody has that opportunity. It's not like people don't have spare garages in New York. It's not a thing. But then also, and I think our mutual friend Leslie would agree with this, thinking about how to extend that hotel experience outside of the property, right? So we may not necessarily have an opportunity to continue the experience as we did before, but I think particularly for properties that already have followings that have strong identities, there are ways of translating that to an in-home experience, or partnering with other brands where you're still able to represent those values and keep the fire alive until we can actually start serving people again. But I agree, like it's difficult. One of our clients is the SLS in Beverly Hills,
Right.
and they've got the Bazaar in as their main restaurant. That's quite possibly the worst possible concept to be operating under COVID, because you can't do takeout. It's all about the experience. It's very communal. And so, they've made the decision to shut down. There's just not much they can do there. So that's why when I was talking about the opportunities, I want to be very careful. It's not like everyone has an unlimited set of options. We're all facing challenges, that some of which are insurmountable.
Right. Thanks so much, Mark. That was really valuable. Chris, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, Mark, just in regards to being the differentiator, my question is, what is your advice to being the differentiator for your company and messaging, let's say, originality while making people feel safe? There's so much redundant information about COVID and safety, but how can they go maybe a step further in making guests feel truly connected? Because I think we still got to go back to the product of how is that customer service really taking it to the next level?
Yeah. I think that one connects to what I was saying about leaning into your storytelling elements that naturally feed into that, right? So if you're an upscale, elegant, luxury hotel, and you're already well known for excellence and attention to detail and that sort of things, that's a natural fault. Like we were already clean, where we were ready for this before COVID hit. I think everyone has elements of their brand storytelling that they can use to exemplify that, particularly on the friendliness side of things, right? So making a connection with the guests, there are a lot of different options to show that. Everyone can pull out a policy with like, this is our 100-point checklist of how we clean the rooms, et cetera, et cetera. But you also have the options to actually show your staff doing that, right? Enjoy, collaborating with each other. Like you can introduce a human element to it. There are lots of different ways that you may even be able to incorporate some of the guests who are there as well. So I think it's going to differ from concept to concept, but really speaking to your staff, thinking about like how are you actually planning on addressing this operationally, and translating that into whatever communication mediums, and telling them like, this is how we do it, and we do it for this specific reason. This is why we care.
Great. Chris, any follow-up?
No, I agree with that. I appreciate that. That detail. That was good. Thank you.
I've got a question, Mark. How does a brand or a property begin to start with pivoting their storytelling? If, say, what Denise said, it's about socializing and having high-end cocktails and that whole experiential.
Yeah, I mean, pivoting storytelling is always a difficult exercise. I mean, like you spend so much time building it. You know, I know, this is something that Denise has more experience in than I do. But you put a lot of time into building that brand strategy, that brand story. So shifting it around to something that you are not already is a difficult proposition, and it can be done. People do it all the time, but you also have to do it carefully, because if you do it haphazardly, people recognize inauthentic very quickly, right? So you have to, as much as possible, look for the low hanging fruit, right? Whatever already connects to what you can do, and you'll have to stretch what fits and what doesn't. But that's what we were saying earlier, in terms of like the constraints of what's going on now forces us to be more creative about it, and what we found very helpful is to reach out to our friends, right? Reach out to our partners, reach out to the people in the community. That's been one of the great things that has emerged from this crisis, is the outpouring of support within hospitality, and people willing to extend their hands and offer advice, offer resources, partner on things. I think that is absolutely necessary to do now.
Great. If anyone else has any questions, we've got a couple minutes left. Even if you have specific to your brand or property, we welcome all the questions.
I raised my hand a second.
Yes, Denise.
Just just to kind of piggyback on what Mark said about reaching out to the community and partners. We reached out to City Harvest in New York, and we tried to do some donation things, so that way we could still sort of be involved in a community experience, but yet it wasn't actually, wasn't really socializing. And then we've also reached out to some of the schools like NYU and Baruch College and stuff like that, to see if they want to do like a total buyout, because even with the universities, with social distancing at this point, they can't have 3 and 4 students in a room. So now they don't have enough dorm life. So we said, hey, maybe we could be an extension of your dorm, and then it's kind of a quarantined group of people that can kind of socialize together and still take advantage of some of our, of our brand and of our story.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Which properties are you a part of?
In New York, it's the Mondrian Hotel on Park Avenue, 30th and Park.
Nice.
And also the Standard Hotel that's down in the Meatpacking District. We're still pivoting with that. If anybody knows the High Line, and
the pool parties and all that.
It's one big party, so it's been really difficult to try to figure out how to pivot and what story to tell, and stories that you have to just stay away from, because you don't want to be that hotel that's having parties right now.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Mark, any lasting comments, or Chris?
For me, I just want to say, going through all of this reaffirms my love for working in this sector, just to see like how committed people are to making it work. There are so many obstacles in the way, but from our properties, but also just talking to friends in the sector, the creativity and the resilience that's come out of it has been incredible. And I think there are a lot of great ideas that are going to come out of this episode that we're going to be able to take and continue when things improve. But it's nice to be able to wake up every morning and work with people who are this passionate, and with all of you showing up today, it just kind of reaffirms that. So thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you
so
much. Why don't we all give a virtual round of applause for Mark for taking the time, his attention to detail. And just one last ending comment. This is about community. We're here for all of you. And I know these have been challenging times, but we can look at the silver lining and come together, create strategic partnerships, support people where they need, be a resource. So we are here for all of you. Mark, I know you've offered some great feedback today. Remember, it's that one takeaway that you can take home with and just ponder, put it into practice. And again, for everyone on the call, please again, fill out the feedback form. We're going to continue refining this space. We really want to be there for you and bring on people like Marc and awesome speakers in the future. So have an amazing Wednesday. Thank you for your participation, and go out there and be great.
Thank you very much.
Yes, great. And just the last note, Kathy, you asked if the slides will be available. We have been recording this, so we're going to make the recording available once that gets uploaded and edited, and then I'll send that out along with the feedback form so we can hear from you about future expert speakers and leaders that you would like to hear from, or perhaps any industry-specific questions that you would like answered. So thank you so much again. And if you have any further questions for Marc specifically, please email him. You know how to contact him. Go to his website. He's got a ton of valuable information. So again, thanks, Marc, for spending the time and schooling
Thanks
us
for having me.
on all the trends and what you've found successful with your current clients as well. We really appreciate you sharing that.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.